Welcome, everyone. This is Debbie Mayberry with National Kitchen and Bath Association. You're here for a final webinar of the month on lighting. Today's session is called Modern Lighting with Tammy McKay, AKBD, and she is with the organization. She's actually the owner of Design Eye. She's based out in, I believe, Alberta. And Tammy, if you're there, I'm going to get you started here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on lighting today. It's very exciting to share this presentation with so many people. All right, so let's get started. I have the agenda up here. Now, I have also attended some of the prior lighting seminars, which were fantastic. And there is going to be a little bit of review based on what they said, and I don't think you can talk about modern lighting unless you do sort of address the technical side of it. But in my presentation, I want to have some fun with the aesthetic side of lighting. So I hope you enjoy it. All right, so again, getting sort of some of the terminology out of the way. Luminaire, basically, interchangeable with the term fixture as well. It's basically a lighting instrument consisting of all lamps and all the necessary parts and wiring. Again, lamps, which, previously we sort of called them bulbs, but that's not exactly what we should be referring them to. We should be referring to them as lamps. So they are any of various devices furnishing artificial light. The watt. Okay, so again, probably speaks to my age a little bit, but we used to sort of talk about the brightness of a room based on the watts. So 100 watts light bulb, let's make this room bright, so let's add a 100-watt light bulb. Anymore, we're talking about lamping, and we're talking about lumens and all of that good stuff. So really, watt is only referred to as a unit of power. So it's the amount of energy consumed by the lamp, so an artificial source of light. And just to see where we've come, from prior to now, you can see the incandescent product as number one. And based on that, we've seen some really great energy savings. So throughout the years, some of the bigger companies have provided these prizes. So which governments can sort of say to these bigger manufacturers, who can come up with a more energy efficient lamping for artificial light? And so throughout the years, we've seen some improvements with the halogen product, xenon product, and then all of a sudden we were sort of infiltrated with the CFLs, the compact fluorescent lamps, which were like 25% of what the incandescent product was. And so a 100-watt light bulb, you could get the same amount of light output from a CFL only using about 23 watts. So that was quite revolutionary as far as energy and the energy savings and all of the programs that went along with that. Now our modern lighting that we are using and specifying is the LED product, and the LED product is even better than 20%. You can take a 13-watt LED product and get the same lumen output as, say, a 100-watt incandescent of old. So we really are saving the world from an energy conservation with regard to lighting. It's so exciting, and the product is tremendous. So I spoke about lumens. So now this is about the quantity of light. So it is the measurement of light output. So oftentimes when you're looking at packaging for artificial light, whether it be retrofits or whether it be integrated LED fixtures, what you're seeing is you are seeing the light output measured in lumens. So it may say there might be a lumens um, measurement that's 800 or 500, or sometimes they have a lumens per watt measurement as well. So if it's 90 lumens per watt and it's a 10 watt, then you obviously are getting 900 lumens. So again, it's trying to get comfortable with that. Even myself, who has been specifying LED for a few years now, sometimes you're still sort of questioning whether or not, ooh, is there enough light? We have 10-foot ceilings and we have, white walls and dark floors, and how many lumens do I need to put on top of my countertop? Sometimes that is a little bit tricky. I know Karen had done the last lighting seminar, and she made a lot of sense about those measurements, and I found I even learned a lot from her presentation as well.
Excuse me, Tammy.
Yes.
If you would just move your mic just a little bit, I think it might be just a little close to your speaking voice.
Okay, is this better?
I think so, yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the Kelvin. Kelvin is another measurement, and it is a basic unit of thermodynamic temperature. And this is really important to understand, especially when you're specifying lighting, because it can change the way your room looks based on just one particular measurement. The Kelvin temperatures most used in interiors are from 2200 Kelvin to about 5000 Kelvin. So the 2200 Kelvin is a very warm light. So it would be, for example, the Edison type lamps that are exposed filaments, that sort of thing. Some of them are as warm as 2200 Kelvin. And then there's a really cool sort of measurement of Kelvin, the 5000 Kelvin, which acts a lot like daylight outside. And you can get the can lights, recessed lighting that has these sort of switches from 3000 to 4000 to 5000. But typically we don't go higher than that. It's just not considered a very comfortable light. 3500 Kelvin is considered neutral, so it's neither warm nor cool. It is a very crisp light, but what it does do is it shows reds equally as good as it shows blues. So it is a really great choice. I find in my commercial projects, I've been specifying a lot of 3500 Kelvin. In my residential, depending on the space, whether if it's a kitchen, like a work area, I will often specify 35, but 3000 seems to be my new favorite to specify. Now, why do we want to specify different Kelvin temperatures? Like, what is the purpose? And again, I kind of alluded to it, but from the functional side, we're now seeing a lot of color tuning, lighting, where we can change sort of the Kelvin temperature throughout the day. And from a functional aspect, this can improve health and wellness. And we relate that to the circadian rhythm, again, which we've sort of talked about in previous lighting sessions. And so what this can do is this can allow us to feel energized in the morning and then relaxed in the evening. So the functional part of changing the Kelvin temperature you can really notice a difference in health and wellness and how you feel. From an aesthetic side, what you can do when you change different Kelvin temperatures of your lamping, you can enhance certain colors or materials and finishes. Again, if you're sort of using a particular color, let's say you're using cool colors and you really want to enhance them, then maybe you do it a little bit cooler, the Kelvin temperature. Or if you had really warm colors and you wanted them to stand out and be really rich and and beautiful, you would maybe go with a warmer choice. It also does, vary based on the function of the room, of course. Again, this is a really good sort of graphic that shows how uh, how natural light throughout the day works. So it starts out, let's say, at 8 a.m. at 5,000 Kelvin, and then it slowly warms up to 3,000 Kelvin in the evening. So that is it's basically what our body is in. It's ingrained into our system. This, so when we get up, we need that cool light to feel energy, and go throughout the day, and then wind down in the evening so that we are able to have a good night's sleep. And it's very impactful. I know that there's been tons of measurable studies in memory care facilities where they have, done this sort of color tuning throughout the day and have found that the residents are not pacing quite as much at night and they're sleeping better by having a big amount of the higher Kelvin temperature, its intensity as well as the coolness, earlier on in the day, and then warming up the light throughout the evening. So it it goes back to when we didn't have, watches and clocks and stuff, where we rise to the sun, and then we went to bed with the moon, sort of thing. So it's really important that we sort of recognize this, especially with uh, technology, and everybody's on tablets and you know uh, phones and stuff like that, where we need to sort of be careful of the screen time and the screen, that we have that sort of ability to turn our screen onto the night mode that sort of warms up the screen a little bit, and it does help somewhat. We've seen this visual before if you were on some of the other webinars, but it is a really great visual to show you sort of how light looks throughout the day. So you can see really early in the morning it's quite warm, but as you tend to rise, with the dawn of the day, it gets cooler and cooler, and then it starts to warm up again. So there are a lot of products out there that that can accommodate this type of it, this type of function, so that it looks like the natural daylight. So here's a perfect example of even the aesthetic side of it. So you can see daylight, and then how it changes in the evening. Like in these two images, it almost looks like it's a different space, a different piece of art, a different colored sofa. So it really is quite powerful, how light changes throughout the day. Um, there are a number of different um, products out there that can achieve this. But this is a Philips product, and it's available at the big box stores. So this is very much catered to the residential industry, where it's called Philips Hue. And so the Hue lights that you see here, they're screw-in, retrofit bulbs, lamps. There are integrated recessed can lighting, pot lighting. There are some really interesting shaped sort of sculptural type pieces, and then you have the bridge that sort of connects to the Wi-Fi, and then you have your app on your smartphone, and it is really quite wonderful. Just from a do-it-yourself home kind of thing. You don't have to wire anything. It can just be done from a wireless aspect of it. And again, like I said, there are a number of different products that do it, but this is just one from. I often think if you stay with the big names, then you're sure to get a quality product. So here is sort of the recessed lighting. And they have these preset scenes on your app. And so you can see how the top left, the relax one, like that's a very warm sort of, probably more in the 3,000 to 2,700 Kelvin. And then if you look across to your app, you can press that relax button and that will change your pot lighting or the actual lamping, whatever you have, the fixture that you have them screwed into. It will change it to that warm temperature. And then if you look below, there's a concentrate one that you can, that's a little bit cooler. And then there's the energized one on the bottom right hand, and it has that sort of preset on your app that you can choose, and all of those hue products that are attached to that one preset scene will turn into a very much a cooler Kelvin temperature. So it's really exciting, that we can do this with one touch. And modern lighting is, it's almost um, infinite, the things that you can do with it. And you can do new scenes. You can create your own scenes so that maybe you want, 3,000, at 5 o'clock p.m., all of your lighting sort of thing. So you get to choose how you want to do these scenes, and it's really quite wonderful and very accessible as far as cost as well. I love this image because what this image does is it shows different sort of Kelvins. If you look at sort of the graphs at the bottom, what they do is they kind of show you the wavelengths of light. So you can see how, the blue is a little bit lower, the red is, the warm is a lot higher. And you can see the young woman in the left hand, sort of on the left hand side, her skin tone is really lovely. It's warm and it glows, and she looks. It's a very intimate sort of flattering light. And then if you go to the right hand side, we have a cooler light. You can see the spike in the blue, the green is fairly high, and the reds and the yellows are lower. And then what happens there is her skin tone is quite dull, like it doesn't have quite the warmth that the other one does. But if you also notice, the blue dress stands out and it looks really quite wonderful. So, depending on what you want to highlight, you can sort of manipulate in a good way different, sort of renderings of materials. Like if you're doing landscape, you probably are looking more towards a cooler Kelvin temperature for your artificial lighting. So because what it would do is it would really enhance the greens and the blue greens, that sort of thing. Here's another thing. We're right now, Grays, Carreras. It's still fairly hot. We're sort of on the tail end of the sort of the cool colors, or at least it looks that way. And you can see how crisp the chandeliers or the pendants above the island. You can see what a crisp white that is, a white light, and it makes the cabinets and the backsplash, even the under cabinet lighting is quite a cool Kelvin, like probably at least 3 to 3,500 Kelvin, and it really makes the Carrera, the grays, and the crisp whites just look so fantastic. And if you can picture a real yellow sort of light in those fixtures, it just wouldn't render the materials very well. So this is a perfect example of why you would want to choose maybe a little bit cooler source. Here's another one. Again, these whites, they're very, very crisp, and they've used cool colors. And so to have sort of this, a really yellow light in here wouldn't necessarily render the room as successfully as it already is. And this is the natural daylight that's coming, and so you can see how cool it actually renders the space. Beautiful room. Now, if we flip it to a warm source, again we have warm woods, we have a warm paint color on the wall, we have some really nice sort of off-white textures on the sofa. And so again, to have a cool, really cool light source in this room, it wouldn't do it justice, and it might cast sort of a chartreuse feel onto the yellow paint color. So warming it up, maybe with a 2700 in this particular room, might be the best choice to enhance your materials and finishes a little bit better. Again, another sort of example, we have the Edison lamping in this particular chandelier, and it's really beautiful and warm, and just with the textures of the upholstery and the wood, and even the walls, the warmth of the walls too. The warmth of it just really brings out the lovely warm colors. It makes them appear more rich and quite exciting. So again, there's reasons why you would choose one particular Kelvin temperature of artificial light than another. So I want to talk a little bit about color rendering index. CRI, we're fairly familiar with that, hopefully, and they have come up with a different way of testing it, and it's already been discussed in previous ones. It's getting better. I feel like the CRI is a more accurate measurement now that they're using different sort of testing, because I know they were having a lot of trouble, especially with the LED product, with the reds. Even though we would have a really high CRI and everything, the reds, they just couldn't seem to get it so that it would render really high. So because that, of course, it's a scale from 1 to 100, with 90 plus really being the most desirable CRI in artificial lighting. So what it is it's the measure of a light source's ability to reproduce the colors of objects faithfully in comparison with an ideal or natural light source. So again, no matter if you're, getting a color at your hair salon, or if you're trying to make sure that your paint color is absolutely dynamite in a space, having a high quality of light is very important. And whether it's 3000 Kelvin, 3500, whatever, it's still with sort of another factor in choosing lighting for today's spaces. So again, you can see, again, these charts really are quite graphic and they tell it all. And you can see the CFL sort of is the bottom one. And it really is, it's not a great choice if you want good quality lighting. And then there's the incandescent product, which you're not surprised, I'm sure, to see the really high and the warm tones. And the LED is getting better for sure. It's becoming a lot more successful. I would still warn people that probably 70% of the LED out there is probably still at the 80 CRI. I know any more good LED, and I think California often is the leader as far as legislating sort of rules where manufacturers have to create all lighting that's 90 CRI or better. And so I think that as we go forward with lighting, 80 CRI might not even be an option. It will all be 90 CRI eventually. But a person at this stage of the game, you really have to be selective, and you have to read, and you have to find out exactly what you're getting. Because 80 CRI, where color is important, it's just not good enough, and so your clients are spending their good money on beautiful countertops and gorgeous cabinets and flooring and all of these particular things. And so you want to make sure that it is being lit properly. Again, showing artwork, you can see how, um, different sort of CRIs. It just, and it's all relative, of course. I do understand that. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, or unless you have something to compare it to, it's really, really hard to sort of see the difference. But once you do compare, it is really quite obvious that having a 90 plus CRI is definitely desirable. Again, here, good quality, bad quality. I mean, the fruit on the left just looks fantastic, and the other one just kind of looks a bit dull and not quite as delicious as the left-hand side. And that has to do with not necessarily the Kelvin temperature, but the actual color rendering index in this situation. Okay, types of lighting. Again, we're all familiar with this. We have accent lighting, art lighting, task lighting, general lighting. This particular one shows general lighting, the chandeliers hanging in the middle of the room, just providing that lovely sort of ambient light. Accent lighting, probably my favorite type of lighting. And you can see how the art above the fireplace is lit quite beautifully. And then the little cubbies on either side of the fireplace, they have strategically placed accent lighting where they wanted. And it's just so dramatic and lovely. Task lighting. And here we see some under cabinet lighting. And under cabinet lighting is so effective because, as you see in this image, we have recessed pots or can lighting above. And sometimes when you're standing chopping vegetables or doing whatever you're doing at the counter, sometimes the pot lighting can make it so that you're standing in your own shadow. And that's not effective task lighting at all. So by having your lighting placed under the cabinets, you know that it's lighting the whole countertop space and you're not getting any shadowing. So it's a really, really great way to create task lighting in a kitchen. Probably 15 years ago, it was a luxury to have it. Now it's pretty mainstream, especially with the linear sort of tape lighting the LED has to offer. It's quite fantastic. And then lighting is art. I mean, it's so incredibly, it's almost whatever your imagination can think up, we can now do with lighting. This is one of my favorite places in Chicago. I get the opportunity to go to NeoCon quite often, and this is in a hotel called the Ambassador. It used to be called the Public, and you can see there's no art on the walls at all because it's the lighting that is the art. It steals the show. It is so incredibly beautiful. Um, and now, having all those particular types, it's important to layer it properly from a visual standpoint and a functional standpoint, of course. So you can see in this particular image, we have accent lighting on the artwork behind. We have general lighting in the recessed lighting in the ceiling. And then we have task lighting at the bar counter on the side. So it's a really lovely way of layering different types of lighting. And again, assuming they're on different switches with different dimming capabilities, you can create all these different scenes if you have some sort of a system. Going back to the Ambassador Hotel again, some of the layering, their lighting is just spectacular here. And what I love about this particular instance is like the artwork that's on the wood columns. You don't see really where where the light is coming from because they've concealed it so well on the ceiling. But you see these beautiful sort of pools of light on the art. And then they have the lovely um, artwork above the fireplace that they've also lit. And then we have some task lighting behind sort of the sofas, which are also sofas on the other side of the sofas, which allow for somebody to read a menu or something like that. And then we have, the kinetic sort of sculpture of the fire, the candle and the fireplace. It's just such a high drama, lovely layered space in the evening. It's so well done. And what I wanted to sort of remind people of, and I teach interior design in design theory at the University of Alberta, and I believe having the elements and principles of design sort of ingrained on the tip of my tongue, I think it makes me a better lighting designer, makes me a better interior designer. But knowing sort of what they are and how we're going to use them and what we're going to say about them in lighting design is just as important as it is in interior design, whether you're, choosing furniture or cabinets or, surfaces. So I just want to sort of bring it to your attention, that, we have color and texture and line and space and light as our elements of design. And how are we going to use those elements? How are we going to create balance in this space? And even balance as far as lighting goes. And I want to sort of take it a little bit further and think about sort of the aesthetic of your decorative lighting. You could go to a lighting store and you could choose you could choose one fixture that you really liked, and then you could choose sort of the family of it. But that wouldn't necessarily be all that interesting. It would be quite monotonous, actually. So if we understand the elements and principles of design and what makes things good design, what we can do is we can then choose different fixtures aesthetically that still have harmony, that still create emphasis, that are in proportion, that create some interesting contrast. And what that does do is that makes for a spectacular lighting design. So again, just sort of, I often think when I start a project, I usually go back to these fundamentals of design and think, all right, what do I want to say about color? What do I want to say about texture? And this can be directly related to the decorative fixtures that we're choosing as well. You think about this is a work of art. You can see how there's emphasis and balance and all and repetition, like the ballerina skirts and there's all these different things going on in this work of art. And just picture that as your sort of lighting, your decorative lighting. How can we make this interesting? We don't want to make it too predictable. We don't want to make it, boring. We want it to be dynamic and interesting. Again, here we use the elements and principles every day of our life, even if we aren't aware of it. Getting dressed in the morning, but you look at this sort of composition of a plate. It's really quite wonderful. You can see sort of the repetition of the red. You can see the emphasis by having that sort of, interesting contrast of the bones sticking out or the leafy vegetables, the green with the red, creating a complementary color scheme. So it really is, if you sort of stand back and look, there's sort of those elements and principles in everything. And a final example is the floral arrangement. Like it's really quite wonderful when you see the different textures from the petals of the flowers and the leaves to sort of this really bizarre sculptural branch and the complementary color scheme of purples and yellows and just the different sort of forms and textures and how they've repeated it and how they, have created a really lovely floral arrangement. And sometimes it's hard to talk about the aesthetics of lighting and the aesthetics of design because it's so very subjective. You know, what I may like is definitely different than what somebody else may like. So if you understand the elements and principles of design, you can look at something and you can see the merit in it, even if it isn't sort of something that you would choose for yourself. So again, design of fixtures. So when I'm speaking of layering of fixtures in this particular instance, how do you create a successful lighting package? And so I'm not talking about layering of accent lighting and ambient general lighting and task lighting. I'm talking about layering the decorative fixtures. Like how do we make a suite of fixtures look cohesive? And what I'm going to suggest to you, and again, stay with me throughout this particular slide and the next one. I'm going to suggest this is my inspiration piece. So it kind of has whispers of an old style chandelier, but it really has sort of a modern taste to it and lines. So if this is our inspiration piece, I'm going to suggest that maybe, you know, and all of these fixtures that you're going to see in this slide are from different companies. And so, but what we are doing here is we're creating sort of this layer of decorative lighting. And what we're also doing is we're creating some repetition of form. We have a circular sort of form here. We also have chrome. So here's a material that is you know, consistent and repeated. And then we have a pendant fixture, which again, we've now introduced white. So we've introduced sort of another material, but we still have the circular form and we still have the chrome. So even though they are very different, all three of these, you can see how harmony is created through at least using repetition of form or materials. Now this one, we've created repetition with the white, and it kind of has that sort of finger-like feel to it, like the inspiration piece, but it's a little bit more organic. But what we're also doing is we're taking sort of geometry, that really hard line, and we're creating some contrast, some interest by having a little bit more organic shapes. Here would be an accent light, again, very simple, but could be used anywhere and look quite fantastic in this particular case. We have a bar vanity light in a washroom or bathroom, powder room, whatever, wherever. But again, we have the chrome, we have the geometry, we have sort of the crystal, the clear glass sparkle like what we see in the inspiration piece. And finally, I'm going to throw this one in. It doesn't read quite as turquoise as it is, but it is this turquoise sort of veneered, folded, lovely, sort of wavy kind of fixture that, again, kind of has that beachy feel because of the turquoise feel. But it also has a circular footprint, but it looks so very lovely with sort of the wall sconce that's kind of looks like coral, that sort of thing. But it does create some interest. You want sort of that pop of something that's, you know, memorable and you know, create some interest in conversation. So I'm going to suggest to you that when you are choosing your decorative lighting, that you do push the envelope. You push it enough to make you feel uncomfortable, and it's amazing what clients gravitate towards. It's very exciting. You know, oftentimes they'll say, "Oh, I don't know, I'm pretty conservative," but when you show them some really interesting things like this, they tend to be excited, and you know, they always surprise me. So. Another thing that we're seeing from a design standpoint, especially with the pandemic, is, you know, so many people are working from home, and I have heard so many silver lining kind of comments about how much they've loved, you know, working at home and looking out into the backyard, and you know, just having this sort of desire to, you know, keep it more simple. Get back to the simpler things, and create sort of simple luxuries. And biophilic design, I don't believe is a trend anymore. I think that most designers are starting to design with it in mind. And so biophilia is the instinctive desire for humans to surround themselves with nature. It promotes health and wellness as well as happiness. So bio meaning life, and philia is friendship. And again, there are measurable instances where they can suggest people heal faster if they're in a hospital room looking, out the window to a canopy of leaves versus a brick wall. So we all sort of have this, and it's ingrained within us, just like the circadian rhythm. We just have this sort of pull towards nature. And how do we do it in lighting? Here's, in form. Form, we can do it. There's so many interesting lighting fixtures out there. This is this is in sort of an ensuite, so it kind of has that watery bubble, water droplet feel. So also form, you can see this particular pendant. Again, it just has, even though it's a real modern twist, it just has a real nature feel to it. Again, this very popular artichoke fixture that is a classic of the 20th century. Again, it's derived from nature, so it just has a really lovely form to it. This particular one, reminds me of a spent dandelion, and it just has a lovely sort of soft, luxurious, pretty feel to it. But again, definitely nature inspired. This is one of my favorites, this sort of branch light. It sort of creates tension between, natural and modern. It's really quite well done as far as sculpture goes. Also, we can create some nature in lighting, some biophilic design by the materials we choose for lighting. So you can get these from West Elm or anywhere. You can, DIY it. There's some really lovely. Etsy has some really wonderful pieces too. So to pull sort of the woods and the warmth, like barnwood is so very popular right now. Again, I love the tension that this image creates between sort of this really industrial space along, and then you have this contrast of these sort of basket type fixtures. This particular image is actually from a hospital, so they have actually real plants that are in the patient rooms. So again, just bringing people a little bit closer to nature. The sort of mother of pearl, the seashell kind of look. It just has a lovely beachy feel to it. Again, sort of really natural, sort of burlappy, jute kind of materials creates a really inviting, just a real nice texture in a space. One of the buzz things, and I am aware of the time, one of the buzz sort of phrases now that we're talking about in design is experiential design. So I think our job as designers, we're not only tasked with making a space look good, but we're also tasked with making a space feel good, creating an experience. And how do you create a wonderful experience for a client or for a homeowner is sometimes we relate it to how can we excite more senses, touch, all of those sort of things. And so experiential design is something that is really sort of where we're heading with lighting, because lighting plays such a huge part in the experience of a room. So you have to really, really sort of keep in mind how a space feels. It's quite often easy to make a space look good, but not quite as easy to make it feel good. And I just want to, wrap up sort of this thing, just sort of showing some trends that we're seeing in lighting as far as application as well as design. We're seeing a lot of chandeliers now. Chandeliers aren't just for over top of, the dining room table. We're seeing chandeliers over top of islands and and what's lovely about this is the quality of light too. It brings a ton of light into the space, but it creates a lovely diffused light. It isn't sort of this pendant, this glare bomb that's um, has a concentrated beam of light on a polished surface that's then creating glare. What it is it's bouncing light off the ceiling, at the walls, and it's creating an abundance of really good quality light. Large scale fixtures. It's kind of funny because, proportion and scale is so very important. And when you have it too small, for some reason it just doesn't look good. But we're seeing large scale and it has sort of an interesting feel to it. So we're seeing some really large scale fixtures out there. String lights. Of course, string lights are so popular. I have 11 and 13-year-old daughters who have string lights in their rooms. They have a tent set up outside now, and they have a cord running to the house, and they have string lights in their tent now too. So whether it be inside or outside, um, there are some really, really fun string light applications, and you can get the string lights anywhere, and they add such an atmosphere. It's really quite wonderful. Whimsical fixtures. I'm seeing a lot of whimsical fixtures out there. The top left one is from CB2, and the bottom one I can't remember where it's from, but just having a lot of fun. And again, you can see biophilia at its best here, and just really having a little bit more fun with design. Plant pots. We're seeing a lot of interesting outdoor lighting. I mean, how can you not sort of take lighting outside? It's so incredibly beautiful, and outdoor rooms are so very popular. And when I was in Milan last year and saw this company, and they create these lighting sculptures, and they are so fantastic and so very beautiful. And what they do is they provide this lovely glow of light as you're sort of experiencing, your outdoor space. Floor lighting. I'm seeing a lot of that. So keeping the I guess noise of the ceiling very quiet. So keeping the ceiling very quiet with nothing, and having, sort of grazing this particular three-dimensional wall with uplighting instead of, this image wouldn't quite have quite the success if it was lighting coming from above, I don't believe. Basket pendants. I mean, this is a pendant from IKEA. And I don't think, like, all of sort of the design sort of Instagram pages I follow, I bet every 10 Instagram feeds I see this particular fixture. So this is very, very popular, this particular sort of rattan baskety kind of fixture. Shadow play. Again, creating some really interesting patterns on the wall with, this uplight fixture, which is $20, and having it go through plants or through some sort of interesting shapes, and creating some really interesting art on the wall. Again, this one is quite fantastic. And the warm metals. I was at a sort of at KBIS actually in Vegas this year, and went to this one seminar on like upcoming trends. And they were talking, like, if you look through the years, they like the warms and the cools, they tend to have sort of a decade long sort of run. So what they're saying is we kind of did, cool. Everything was cool grays, silvers, all that sort of thing in the last 10 years. So this upcoming 10 years, we're going to flip again to the warm. Grays are still here, but they're a little bit warmer. We have some really lovely warm metals, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm dating myself, but having sort of like the 70s were like the avocado and the yellow harvest gold sort of thing. And that was a reaction from the 60s that were very cool. And if you look way far back in history, the 20s to the 30s, the 20s were very cool, the 30s were very warm. And oftentimes it does speak to what's going on politically and socially, sort of thing. And with the pandemic, I have no doubt that the warm colors and materials are going to prevail. So that is basically the end of my presentation, and I wanted to bring I wanted to bring attention to the lighting specialty badge, which I was lucky enough to be a part of. And I don't know if Debbie, you want to come on and speak a little bit to it, or but I think it's really, really a great opportunity to hone your skills on lighting and be able to do a successful lighting plan and understand all the basic parts of specifying and choosing wonderful lighting for your spaces. And again, I just want to, in closing, lighting is getting more recognized, but it still does continue to be overlooked and underappreciated. And I want to tell you that you need to be bold and have fun with your lighting.
Hi, Tammy, are you there?
I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. This has been a wonderful presentation. I was just enjoying listening to you and all of the great photos and images that you shared with us and the concepts of lighting. It was just stunning. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying so.
And so, as you can imagine, I've been collecting questions. So, are you ready?
I am, for sure.
So, someone was asking, do you have any experience with the Halo home system?
I am familiar with the Halo product, but not the home system. I have no doubt, like Halo is a very recognized, well-recognized brand. So actually, I'm writing it down and I'm going to check it out because I'm sure, like I do specify Halo recessed lighting. So it is something that I will look to for sure.
Okay, good. And then so I'm just going to go down the list as I've been collecting them. Are there any bulbs that remember your settings and do them automatically?
In sort of the really sort of highly developed, refined lighting systems, absolutely. Like it's again, like with some of the systems, it's only sort of what what you dream of they can do. I know Lutron is a leader in sort of the systems, and absolutely they can sort of it's kind of like when you go Google something, it brings up, because it brings up exactly what you want because it recognized what you were doing for the past 15 days. And absolutely it does. It will remember settings.
Okay, that's great to know. And I just wanted to answer a quick question here that came up about this lighting specialty badge. So as far as textbook, there's not, but we do have a special online information. I don't know how many pages are involved with the lighting badge, but there are probably 50 or 60 or so.
And it's very in depth.
Very good. Thank you. So I just wanted to let all of you know out there that there is not a textbook per se, but it is all online information that you study from. So thank you for that. And then so let's continue, Tammy. The Philips Hue product requires new lamps. Is that correct?
Yes, you have to actually buy.
Oh, are you there, Tam?
Are you? Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry. And the Hue lamp, it comes like you can have a starter set which it comes with the bridge and then I think two or three lamps itself. But then you can buy the lamps singularly after that, and you can just keep adding on to them with one bridge. Like my 13-year-old has 6 different lighting sort of fixtures on one of her, she has these scenes that she creates throughout her bedroom. And it's very so I guess in answer to the question, yes, you have to buy the specific Hue bulb lamp itself.
Okay, good to know. So more questions. Do you recommend layered lighting in a small kitchen?
I do. Oh my goodness, yes. Because it just, especially in a small kitchen, because oftentimes a small kitchen it has to function as a it has to function as a dining room sometimes too, or it has to, it'd be a home office and that sort of thing. So I really think that layered lighting, again, you have your general lighting, some accent lighting, maybe it's up lighting on top of the cabinets, and then task lighting. Yes, absolutely, I do.
Great. So regarding the 4-can light slide, which was, I think, in the beginning,
Yes.
showing the various settings for
Uh-huh.
relaxing, reading, etc., can you inform us as to the Kelvin temperature for each one?
Um, I I would only be guessing. Now I know if you went onto the Hue sort of site, they would tell you, but I can guess that the energized would be 5. The relaxing would be 2700. The concentration one would probably be 35, and then there was another one which I believe would be 3002. So I don't know the exact, because of course they are presets that sort of, the lighting engineers from Philips have determined that this is the proper Kelvin for this particular scene. Um, but I think just based on sort of relativity, you can sort of say, okay, this is definitely cooler, because they wouldn't go much less than 2 and they wouldn't go much less than 5. So you can kind of, and again, because it is sort of, electronically sort of calibrated, it might be 3300, it might be 4900 sort of thing, because I think you can literally point to the warmth of the light you want. I don't think you have to put in a number.
Okay, so since we're still talking about Hue lamps, someone was asking if they work in existing fixtures.
They do. That's what's so exciting is you can like unscrew your existing light bulb, a lamp, and you can screw in the Hue and they work beautifully. So if you have, shades, you can create these really lovely sort of, you can color. You can literally make your shade blue or green or purple. So yes, that's what's so exciting about them is that they're retrofit.
That's great. So we're going to switch a little bit here. After under cabinet lights, oh, excuse me, are under cabinet lights coming out with tunable colors as well? And do you know of a brand that you might suggest?
Yes, they are. And I apologize. I don't know. I know that there's one they're actually out of Calgary, although they do sell all over the world because they get all their raw materials on from Germany, and it's called Senso Lighting. So Senso, Senso Lighting, and they're out of Calgary, and it is probably, when I talk about like there's some really good products that are they're not cheap, but that if I could, if I had unlimited amount of funds in all my projects, their lighting is beyond spectacular. So yes, there is color tuning in the linear lighting. And I do know of that. I am certain that there probably is some U.S. manufacturers that have it, but I'm sorry, I'm not aware.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to the next one. In the dining room, would the light that illuminates your food be considered task lighting or accent lighting? That's interesting.
That's a great question, and I often struggle with that myself. Like, it would probably be both, right? Because you think, like, because you're eating, you want to see what you're eating, so it kind of is a task, like, but it also is really depending on what it's doing. Like, maybe it's creating shadow play on the ceiling, so it might be creating some really beautiful accent lighting. And then, but it's also general lighting too. So plus, if it's a really outrageously wonderful looking fixture, maybe its lighting is art as well. So it can almost capture all of those. It could tick all those boxes as far as types of lighting.
Wonderful. Let's see. So a while back, we were looking at some spotlights that were pointed at the art. Are those actual spotlights, or are they a different kind of lighting?
They like if they were speaking of the ones in the hotel, like the spotlight, usually what it is it's a directional recessed product, like a directional pot light or can light, or what it is it might be a really sort of low profile track light. So those are usually the best choices for accent lighting and accenting art.
Okay, and then there's a comment here, Ketra by Lutro has tunable white light fixtures. Just thought I'd put that out there.
Thank you. I knew that there are lots out there, so I appreciate you bringing that one forward as well.
Do you have time to continue for a few more minutes?
I sure do.
Okay, great. So someone was asking about Kelvin, and what would you recommend for under-counter lighting, and what CRI?
Okay. Well, and this might be a little bit okay. First of all, it would depend on what your materials are. If your counters are maybe on the cool side or the warm side, if they're on the warm side, I would probably recommend 3000 with a 90 CRI plus. Um, and also, if it's like maybe a cooler undertone counter, I might go with a 3500 with also a 90 plus CRI.
Okay, so here's a sort of a similar related question. If a client does shift work and when creating a lighting plan, would you just reverse the Kelvin temperatures? So would we make midnight or noon temperature?
That, you know what, that's a really good question. I have a son that's a police officer, so I understand what shift work is all about. But you're sort of, it's tough because what you're doing is you're sort of creating this. And if you're a constant shift worker, like if you do the same shift week after week after week, then the answer would be yes. Because you want to sort of recreate breakfast at you know maybe 7 o'clock at night or something like that. So it does help with that sort of jet lag, so to speak. But if it's hard to know if you're, because I know, for example, my son, he goes on nights and then he has 2 days off and then he goes on days again. So it's really hard, in that instance. I almost would be more inclined to sort of keep it what is sort of what the outdoors is doing. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay. That's good. So a lot of people actually been asking about what is that font that you're using, the one that says agenda there?
Oh, you know what? It's my favorite font. It's called PW Scratched font, and it is a true type font. So you can just Google it, and you can. I use it in my company, like on my letterhead too. I love it. So I'm glad that people noticed it because I'm like, I love this font. So I'm thrilled that somebody noticed.
Good. So here's another one. As an interior designer, this person likes to change or rearrange items that hang on the walls in the home. Do you have a rule of thumb to go by to light different items?
Oh, that's a really good question. I tend to probably go with maybe a track system. And because if you're moving things all around, what the track does, especially if it's sort of like LBL or tech lighting, that sort of thing, then you can actually move the heads anywhere along sort of the actual track itself. And so for if you're changing a whole bunch, then you can move them. If you just get a regular track where you can't move the heads, then possibly you can, direct them in different ways, and that could work to a certain extent. But oftentimes people malign track lighting, and I think as long as, like for example, if you have a white ceiling, then you would pick a white track. If you have a wood ceiling, then you would pick like a brown or a black or something. The key is track lighting isn't beautiful. It's what it does that's so incredible. So you want to make sure you notice what it does and not what it is. So you want to create no contrast when you do put it on a ceiling.
So, of course, the question comes up about the track lighting. Is there a recommended high-end track lighting brands? I'm sure there are, but maybe you
Oh
have some
gosh.
suggestions.
Oh my stars. It's funny, like from soup to nuts, really. Like I've purchased IKEA track lighting. IKEA has some wonderful track lighting. Um, but oh gosh, there's GE has a really wonderful track that has the 90 CRI. So yeah, GE fixtures. That one is really quite wonderful. I think that's the one I specified a little while ago. There's also a track called Kendall Lighting. So KEN, I think DALL, Kendall Lighting. They have a really wonderful track that's quite mid-range price, and again the 90 CRI and in different finishes. But most companies do have WAC and Tech. I noticed somebody, yes,
Mhm.
definitely Tech Lighting has some fantastic products. Tech Lighting is fantastic.
Great. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we do record the Q&A, so that's all in the recording in case you have to leave. I just have a couple more questions, Tammy, and then we'll
No
probably
problem.
wrap. Thank you. So here's a good one. And not many people have been asking about this. So how about layering light in bathrooms? How do you divide the lights?
Oh, I love that question. I have this one image which I debated on putting it up, and it's literally this 5 by 8 bathroom. It was, so what they did was they hung sort of pendants on either side of the mirror, creating the task lighting, so lighting the face, really quite beautiful. And then what they had to the side of the toilet itself, they had these recessed shelves, and it was recessed into the wall, and they were probably only like 4 inches deep, but they were glass shelves, and they had some little recessed sort of puck lights that lit this beautiful sort of display of glass type products, like so that created some accent lighting. And then, of course, there was just some recessed lighting in the shower bath area. So, although you do have a really small space, there are opportunities to create some accent lighting. And even if you have like, again, a track, I don't know why I'm talking about track so much. Never have I ever talked about track this much. But if you have sort of a junction box in the middle, you can create these really beautiful pools or spots on the wall, sort of opposite all of the items that go into a bathroom, as long as you have really wonderful task lighting to light the face. So there are opportunities to create some really interesting drama. And then, of course, you can't forget the candles when you have a bubble bath. So.
That's the best. So I have two more here.
Mhm.
Thank you. So do all lamps share their CER? The person says that quality seems to be the most important one. Do you agree?
So we're speaking of the CRI.
Correct. CRI. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do they like they're not all equal, not even close. You really have to read the packaging, and oftentimes, if as far as packaging goes, if it is 90 plus CRI, they will always mention it because they want you to they want to brag about it, and they're proud of it. But if the CRI is not even mentioned on the package, I would be willing to bet that it is 80. So 80 tends to be sort of the baseline. And then if it's 90, it's usually mentioned. So no, they don't all come that way. You really have to, and I would say 20% of the lighting at the big box stores are probably 90 CRI or better. So you
That's
really have to be selective.
That's good to know. Thank you. And then the final question, I apologize if we can't get to everyone's questions, but we are running short on time. So here's one about there's a person in Central California where she lives and designs. Every room seems to have a ceiling fan. Do you have any ideas for lighting and or like a light kit or not using a light kit, that type of thing?
That's a good question. For one thing, I will say about ceiling fans, I like it when they go away more than when they stand out, depending on what they look like. But I think, again, using a light package sometimes is important, even if it's just your general lighting. Like maybe you need a light package so for vacuuming or cleaning, that sort of thing. But maybe it's not generally used because maybe you have some recessed lighting that's creating some accents. You have floor lamps, you have table lamps, you have all of this really lovely layered effect throughout the space. And I think that, again, fans are, we have to have fans, just for comfort. So I get that. I think that you don't have to have a lighting package on the fan, but you may need it. And again, that would be, it doesn't create the best light. A big fixture in the middle of a space, it's not a great quality. But again, so if you're entertaining and you're relaxing, you would never turn it on. But maybe it's needed for, again, sort of that cleaning or something like that, where the other lights just would not, they just wouldn't be enough.
Well, Tammy, this has been excellent. I mean, and I really appreciate that you stayed to answer lots of questions.
No,
And
it's been great. I
oh,
really appreciate it.
oh, you're very welcome. And if you don't mind, I'll probably send out your information or at least a way for someone to contact you. So what would you recommend?
Um, Email is perfect.
Okay, great.
Hmm.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. And we hope to have you back again, Tammy. Have a great day.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you.